Hi there, Dan Ferris, editor of Extreme Value, published by Stansberry Research here, and today's video is inspired by all the news coverage about tariffs. So let's just talk about what a tariff is and what it's supposed to do and what that has generally led to in the past. And I don't expect this will take as long as usual because tariffs are a very primitive kind of a simple subject. Okay, so what is a tariff? A tariff is a tax. Sometimes it takes the form of like a customs duty. I remember when I was in college, we went to the Bahamas with the biology club to study all of the undersea creatures which are visible at various places around the Bahamas. It's a great diving site. And I bought a box of crackers or something at this local store, and I noticed it was expensive, and the biology professor said to me at the time, yeah, everything's 52% dutiable. So there's at that time, I don't know what it is now, 52% duty on everything coming into the Bahamas. Well, what does that do? It makes everything cost 52% more to everybody in the Bahamas who's buying it. And, in a place like that, there's a lot of tourism, so people are there to spend lots of money anyway, so they don't think about paying 50% more for a box of crackers or anything, frankly. And so generally, tariffs, people can get away with tariffs all over the place. But the current discussion around President Trump's ideas, a typical example is steel tariffs, okay? So what would that do? Well, it would make steel cost more for people in the United States consuming steel or anything with steel in it. And we already know how this works out. It makes us poorer, makes the United States poorer. The alleged intended outcome is the protection of the steel industry in the United States. That's why you often hear the word protectionism thrown around. Protective tariffs, they're sometimes called, because that's what they are. It's an attempt to make U.S. steel more attractively priced than cheaper foreign steel. And so if steel is, I don't know how much steel is right now. If it's $100 a ton and foreign steel is, $50 a ton, you put a $51 a ton tariff or a $50.01 tariff, and all of a sudden, U.S. steel is more attractively priced. And President Bush did this in 2002. And I don't even think it lasted a whole year. There were studies done in the aftermath of it that showed lots more, maybe 20 job losses for every steel industry job protected. But then there were other studies after that said, no, you left a few things out or you adjusted the wrong way, and the real effect was either twice as many jobs lost or as much as 5 times as many jobs lost. So somewhere between 200,000, maybe 400,000, maybe 1 million jobs in steel-consuming industries lost to protect maybe 10,000 jobs in the U.S. steel industry at that time. So, it was the measured effect on GDP was minus, I think it was something like between minus 0.0006% and minus 0.0011%, something like that, as I recall the numbers. So it made us poorer. And of course, that can be the only effect of paying more for the exact same thing. If there's no change in the value of something to you and you have to pay more for it because the government says they're going to make you pay more for it by putting a tariff, then what's going to happen? You're going to be poorer. And people are going to lose jobs because the industries that consume steel will now be paying more for raw materials, so they'll have less left over to pay workers. And nothing changes in those industries. Their margins don't go up because they have to pay more for steel. Their margins go down, and their ability to compensate people goes down. So that will be the guaranteed absolute outcome of any tariff we put on, any extra tariff we put on steel or anything else. And like the current discussion back then, Mexico and Canada were exempted because of the NAFTA trade agreement. And I think, like Argentina, maybe Thailand, maybe Turkey, and some other emerging countries were exempted for reasons that I do not know. Um, and, they'll probably do that this time too. So if it's real, if it actually happens, which it may or may not, I don't know. I'm just talking about what has happened in the past and what you can expect if they actually do pass these tariffs that Trump is talking about now. So will it be a disaster for U.S. industry? No, it'll just be a disaster for all the workers who lose their jobs. And, it could be a few 100,000, could be a few tens of thousands. There's no predicting that effect. Um, but nothing good will come of it. Nothing good will come of it. Maybe, a few thousand jobs will be protected. So those people will keep their jobs. But overall, we're all generally poorer because of tariffs. And when Bush, I think they're talking about 10% or something, if I have that right these days, in the current discussion. But I don't know, and I don't care, and it hardly matters. Back in Bush's time, it was between like 8 and 30%, and the average tariff was like 1%. So it was a lot more, and that's the point of this type of a discussion. The politicians think they're going to say, we're going to make people pay a lot more for this stuff, so they're going to buy less of it. And ultimately, it's funny, isn't it? They're just indicting themselves relative to any tax they ever want to put. They're admitting that when the more you tax something, the less of it you get. So they're admitting that taxes just make us all poorer. And it's a stupid discussion. Tariffs are easy. It's a cudgel. It's a blunt instrument. There's nothing to figure out. You tax the stuff coming into your country to make it more expensive to people in your country. Period. You're attempting to protect that industry in your country. Period. That's all it's about. And it's not a hard subject. It's not hard to figure out the outcome. It's not hard to figure out what the precise instrument is, this customs duty or whatever it's going to be. And the whole subject is just a little bit silly for grown adults who know anything at all about history, I think. And I think that's really all I have to say about it. Not the world won't come to an end. Will it cause the bull market to crash? I don't know. Who knows what will ultimately cause the bull market to top out and crash? I just know that tariffs always have the same effect. Always. They just make stuff more expensive for the people in the country putting the tariffs on. So it'd be funny if Trump were honest and said, I would very much like to make American people poorer in an attempt to punish China. Everyone would look at him like he had two heads and say, this is stupid, stop talking about it. And that's what the news coverage should be saying. And that's part of the reason, this type of thing is part of the reason why I do these videos. Because the current regime on TV is talking heads reading teleprompters, extrapolating the last tick and promoting the status quo. And this is an example of promoting the status quo, depending on what television station you want to watch. But they're all wrong, and it's stupid. It's a stupid discussion. It's not a controversial subject. There's no controversy because the outcome is the same every damn time. And, the whole thing it comes from a time long gone, mercantilism, the 18th century, when everybody thought that the wealth of a nation was all bound up in its natural resources. Anything you find or make, metals and grains and so forth within the borders of that country. So everything was a zero-sum game. Either you're going to pay more for our stuff or we're going to pay more for your stuff. And in fact, Adam Smith's book, Wealth of Nations, came out in 1776, the year that the United States said, all these taxes that you're making us pay on all these goods, on all these English goods, stuff like tea and everything, we don't like it, and we're going to be independent now. And another economist named David Ricardo kind of picked up on that and said, if we all just made the stuff we're good at making, we'll all be a little bit different, and we'll sell you our stuff and you'll sell us yours, and we should all just trade freely. And that's what benefits everyone the most, if we all just trade freely. You know, take down all the agreements and all the tariffs and all the taxes and all the attempts to protect domestic industries everywhere and trade freely. That would be the best thing, not only for the most people, but that would be the best thing for the poorest people who tend to get hit hardest by any kind of price raise on any kind of consumable goods. So I think that's all I have to say about tariffs. I've gone on too long for a subject that is completely uncontroversial and primitive and simple and easy to understand and is completely misreported and misrepresented in the news. So thank you for watching, and I will talk to you guys again soon.